Hi, good evening, everyone. It's Caroline here from CFA Society Malaysia. Very good to see all of you here in this session that the society have arranged, especially for the candidates. We know that the recent announcement and update on the exam, the December exam cancellation that was just announced last Friday. Some of you may have mixed emotions about it. But I think what's important now is for us to plan ahead what's coming. And that's why we are very pleased to have Grace from CFA Institute. She's the director of the exam development. And she has been going around in the CFA society around the region to give updates about the CFA program, what's coming in the next year when it transitions to the computer-based testing. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Grace to share with us more about today's content. Please also take note that, of course, we want this to be as interactive as much. So Grace will be sharing for the first 30 minutes, and we will then open up to the floor for the remainder 30 minutes. Right. For those who have already dropped your question when you register for the session, that has been shared with Grace. So she will try to answer as much as she can when she does the sharing. All right. But if you have other further questions, please feel free to drop at the link that we have just shared. It's meet.ps. Right. So your question will be captured there, and that will be posted to Grace to answer during the Q&A session. Right. So without further ado, Grace, thank you. The floor, I pass it to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you, Caroline and friends at Malaysia for this wonderful opportunity. So I'm very, very apologetic in terms of the short notice that was delivered to most of you last Friday regarding we are not able to host the upcoming exam in Malaysia or Kuala Lumpur. So please feel free to ask a lot of questions, and I'll try my best to actually go over them with you. So without further ado, so today I just hope to actually go over with you through a couple of things. And the first one is about the CFA program and the exam. And then we're going to talk about why we're actually changing from paper-based exam to computer-based exam. And then we'll go into in terms of the deferral of the December exam. Okay. Okay, so very quickly, in terms of the CFA charter, regarding this is the gold standard. So essentially, it has been around for many decades already, and is highly recognized by the investment credential as the gold standard. And currently, we have more than 167,000 investment professionals having this particular CFA charter, working in more than 165 countries. At the same time, it's widely recognized by a lot of regulatory bodies in the world, as well as universities, incorporating part of the program into their own program as well. So the CFA exam has 3 different levels. It starts with level 1, and then level 2, and level 3. In general, the levels reflect in terms of the knowledge we expect for a typical investment professional when he or she enters the business. So when someone is entering as a junior analyst, he or she may actually need to get familiarized more with investment tools such as quantitative methods, financial reporting analysis, corporate finance, and economics. So as a result, investment tools will have actually a heavier weight in level 1 of the exam. And in terms of the knowledge level, we expect it to be more like recall knowledge and comprehension. And when this analyst progresses in his or her career into more experienced analyst, he or she will actually have to know more about the asset classes, such as equity investments, fixed income, etc. And so asset classes will have a heavier weight in level 2 of the exam, which requires more about the application and analysis and also some synthesis and evaluation as well. And when the person progresses into his or her career as a portfolio manager or maybe in wealth planning, that means the person will actually need to apply, synthesize, and evaluate, let's say, a portfolio. As a result, portfolio management and wealth planning will carry a heavier weight in level 3 of the exam. So basically, this chart is showing you some ideas in terms of candidates are actually rating the curriculum relevance very highly. After each exam, we actually ask the candidates in terms of how much relevance they believe the exam resembles the curriculum. And for 5 years, we've got a response rate telling us that over 95% of the candidates believe that the exams actually are representative of the curriculum. And so in terms of the compensation difference for financial advisors, we are actually doing some benchmarking analysis, and we show that the result is positive, meaning that for professionals having the CFA designation, they're actually earning an amount that is actually higher than other comparable credentials like CPA and CFP. The CFA charter is meant to be something that is generic and not niche-like. So that means that actually with the charter, you can actually be employed by a lot of different primary investment practices, such as in equities, private equity, real estate, alternatives, venture capital as well. And also this is reflected in the job title, from being an analyst to a portfolio manager to corporate financial analyst, accountants, etc. And here are some top global employers of CFA charter holders. Many of them are actually employed by big global MNC investment banks and asset management companies, which I'm sure that these names are not strangers to you. So we are actually having a very strong analytical background as a charter holder, and as a result, I just like to actually present something in an equation. The question is, what do I need to actually earn the charter? And there are 3 components. The first one is being a bachelor degree, or if you're actually in your final year of study of your bachelor degree, you can sign up for level 1 of the CFA exam. Then the next component is to pass all 3 levels of the CFA exams. And then you also need over 4,000 hours of qualified working experience. If you have all these 3 components, then you can become eligible to be a charter holder. So what you're going to study in the CFA program, and hence you will be tested in the exam, is something that we actually include in curriculum. But largely, we call this the candidate body of knowledge. We actually perform a process very meticulously, involving a lot of charter holders and volunteers, because we want to make sure that this body of knowledge is actually meant to be for generalists, and hence to be actually catered for someone in early career of his or basically career path. We also want to make sure that what candidates are learning is actually something very global, but not a particular market focus. And it should actually have a very good balance between theories and as well as practice. And last but not least, we would like it to be generally accepted, but not something very peculiar or niche-like as well. So this is the process in terms of from the beginning to, let's say, what is the board's involvement in terms of the minimum passing score. Essentially, it starts with global practice analysis, which is a process in which we reach out to the employers, to regulators, in order to ask them, what do you think you need or expect future charter holders to know or understand for them to be successful in a career? Then we're going to carve out the answers to actually design the curriculum or the candidate body of knowledge. And then in terms of the exam consultants, they are also charter holders, and then they are the ones writing the exam questions. And then after candidates take the exam, the result will be graded. And then the next thing is we'll go through a process called standard setting, so that we'll be able to actually present to the Board of Governors, get their input, in order to come up with the minimum passing score and hence what is the pass rate of the exam. So as you can see, this whole process is very meticulously designed with a lot of different volunteers, members involved. I think one of the very popular questions I've got so far is regarding, because of this year's very special situation, and for example, in Malaysia, if I'm a candidate already studied and well prepared for 2020, but now unfortunately the exam will be deferred until 2021, what does that mean to my studies? Does it mean that I'll have to study the 2021 curriculum? We understand this frustration, and that's why the good news is we are going to freeze the curriculum for 2021, which means that the 2021 curriculum is exactly the same as the 2020 curriculum. As a result, even if a candidate is well prepared for 2020, even if he or she is going to take, let's say, the level 3 exam in November next year, he or she will still continue to study the same deck of the curriculum, which is 2020. Having said that, in terms of the next update of the curriculum, which will be tested in 2022, the refresher readings were actually published in September this year already. And that means that this actually would give rise to an idea of what is different from the 2022 curriculum compared with the current one. So this is what the refresh is going to look like. And for the 2020 refresh, which was already published, essentially these are the new readings compared with the 2019 curriculum. So here are some curriculum highlights in 2020, which are new. The first one is about fintech, because we understand this is a super hot topic right now. And therefore, we have included more fintech topics like machine learning and also big data. At the same time, we also beefed up the institutional and private wealth management with more case studies about portfolio management and also risk management as well. In terms of the asset classes, so we have actually changed the readings about ETFs, option strategies, swaps forwards, hedge fund strategies as well. And ethics is actually core to all 3 levels of the exam. So we have included a new reading, which is about ethics and trust in the investment profession, as well as for the level 2 reading about the application of the code and standards. So for all 3 levels of the exam, they cover 10 different topics, which are enlisted over here. And one thing I just want to emphasize is that ethics is core according to the mission of CFA Institute. And that's why it's being tested in all 3 different levels. And in terms of the ways, like the earlier chart that I mentioned very briefly, it's actually going to change depending on the level. So for the design of the exam is that for level 1, it will be made up of entirely of multiple choice questions. And for level 2, it will be made up of item sets, which are typically, there's a passage called vignette, followed by 4 to 6 different multiple choice questions. And for level 3, it will be made up of essays, questions, or constructive response, as well as item sets as well. So this particular exam design or item types is going to remain the same for paper-based as well as computer-based. That means next year, when you are going to take the exam, if you are sitting for level 2, you are going to still expect to see item set questions as well. In terms of the exam results availability, I've got some questions in terms of under CBT regime. Am I going to get the questions immediately? The answer is no, but the service promise is that you're going to get the result actually no later than normally how long you're going to get the result on the paper-based exam. So for level 1 is within 60 days or after taking the exam, same for level 2. And for level 3 is within 90 days. And the main reason why we can't really give you a real-time result is because we need to grade the exam, as well as there are some actually post-exam activities that we need to perform. So as a result, we will give you the results within the service commitment period. I also have the pleasure to share with you in terms of the most recent pass rate. So you can see that for both level 1s and level 2, the pass rate is going to be around 43-45%. And for level 3, it's around 6%. A lot of candidates ask this question. It seems like the exam is really difficult. So how much time should I get myself ready for it? We did a survey to actually candidates, and based on the feedback of the successful candidates, we were actually informed that they invest in not less than 300 hours for each level of the exam. So the keys to the success of the program, personal opinion is that we have a lot of different study tools available for you. One thing being the learning ecosystem, with all three levels being available. One question about it, one question I actually see before this presentation is the mock exam available under CBT? The answer to this question is yes. And where can you find it? It's going to be in the learning ecosystem in which you can get the mock exam. The exact format and also the exact test machine is going to be different from what you're going to be tested in a computer-based testing environment. However, we believe that in the learning ecosystem, the mock exam is resembling very, very similar to the real life situation. So that is going to be useful. And another thing is that my consultants who are the writers of the exam questions, we actually write the exam questions purely out of the curriculum. And every single question is linked to the learning outcome statement, LOS in short. So therefore, I encourage you that when you study, please use the learning outcome statement at the beginning of every reading as a checklist. Ask yourself, can you actually master this learning outcome statement, especially the buzzword, for example, calculate, describe, etc. So this is how the learning ecosystem is going to look like. And when you log in, you're going to see something like a dashboard, essentially telling you in terms of your progress. One cool thing about it is actually it enables you to connect to some of the fellow candidates, for example, to form a study group. The ebook is also available. You can also search for flashcards, search for buzzwords, for example, like CAPM to familiarize yourself and also get some learning and practice problems as well. And of course, the mock exam question. So next, I would like to talk about why CFA Institute is shifting from paper-based exam to computer-based exam. So one thing is actually we are all moving to a digital age, and especially in light of this year that because of the fluid situation of COVID-19 as well, with continued uncertainty, CFA Institute has been working very diligently to modernize the exam. And as a result, all three levels of the CFA exam will be computer-based starting 2021, which means that December 2020 will be the very last paper-based exam. Originally, we planned to actually perform computer-based testing for levels 2 and 3 a little bit later. But the acceleration of levels 2 and 3 into CBT next year also reflects our flexibility and agility to quickly adapt to the changing landscape right now. The benefit to candidates is that because we are actually moving into more testing windows throughout the year, so we are able to actually arrange a smaller group size of testing, better social distancing, safer environment, and also easier scheduling and with more locations as well. So compared with before under paper-based exam, essentially the exam is held only twice a year. That means candidates will have to be actually attending the exam only 2 days of the year, which is kind of rigid. But with computer-based testing, level 1 can be offered 4 times a year, levels 2 and 3 can be offered twice a year. And for each exam window, there can be up to 10 different days that candidates can actually book and schedule for next appointment time as well. So this is definitely a more flexible situation. Another thing is that right now we are all living in a digital world, and actually I got a question from candidates here as well saying that, hey, we're actually doing Excel day to day. This actually resembles our work, and that's actually one reason why we are actually moving to a digital world and computer-based testing, because it resembles what candidates and members are actually practicing at work day to day. But one thing I want to emphasize is that our priorities remain unchanged. doing a computer-based testing doesn't mean we are going to actually make the exam easier. The reason why is because we are still having a bunch of very qualified charter holders who are consultants helping us to write the exam questions. And the exam writing process remains very rigorous. At the same time, we will uphold the passing standard and hence the value of the charter. At the same time, the exam itself is going to be held at a proctored, secured location. This sustainability of the rigor and security of the exam is something we consider as paramount because we don't want to actually have perceived cheating effects as well. And therefore, it will also enhance the quality of the candidate experience by offering more locations, more testing windows as well. So in terms of the process, it's actually made up of two steps in terms of signing up for a Cbt exam. First, you need to register. Next, you're going to schedule. Register meaning that you're going to actually sign up for which particular exam window you're going to take the exam. By exam window, I mean which month. For example, level 1 will be offered 4 times a year. That means the exam windows are February, May, August, and also November. So once you sign up and register in terms of which particular exam window, then the system is going to ask you, where is the location you want to take the exam? Then the next step is about scheduling. CFA Institute will let you know these are the available appointments at your chosen location as well. And each exam window can be up to 10 days long, depending on the local market demand. Then after you are provided with the available date time, then you can actually book the appointment for your exam. And in terms of the service commitment, we are offering computer-based exams at locations more than the number of testing locations under paper-based exam. Each exam duration will be shorter. So under paper-based exam, the exam is testing time is 6 hours. But under computer-based testing time, it will be 4.5 hours. And as mentioned, the exam location is not going to be somewhere, let's say at your home using your computer. Candidates will take the exam at secured location with security robust measures in place at our CBD partner, service partner, Corpometric. In such locations, proctors will be there in order to examine actually candidates' behavior, making sure that a fair and equitable process is taking place. Another thing to remind you is that candidates are not able to register for adjacent windows. So let's say a candidate who is a level 1 candidate takes the exam in February 2021. If unfortunately the candidate does not pass the February exam, he or she cannot take the May exam immediately. He or she will actually wait until the next eligible administration or window, which is going to be August. So a very common questions I have received so far is, how am I going to actually look for the schedule location? So where in Kuala Lumpur can I actually take the exam, for instance? So let me introduce you actually a tool, which is actually from our service provider, Prometric. And this is a corporate scheduler in which you can actually look for the service location. So this is ProScheduler. Essentially, here you can say find a test center. So actually the step before that, I already input CFA level 2, and I would like to look for Kuala Lumpur, KL, Malaysia. Let's say I'm a level 2 candidate and I know that I'm actually ready to take the exam in May. So I type in this period, start and end, and I would like to search for where the centers are going to be and when they are available. So let me show you the results. So essentially the result is going to look something similar, that these are the test center locations at Prometric about Kuala Lumpur, and these are the days available. So you can choose the closest test center, or you can also choose, the first available appointment as well. Another page, which is actually what we call the CFA Institute's landing page on Prometric website, is actually something kind of like a very informative page that you can actually see a lot of different valuable resources. And let me show it to you. There we go. This is the landing page. So if you click locate, you can see where the test location, the locations are going to be offered by Prometric, and essentially it's a screen that I showed you earlier. At the same time, you can see what it is like to prepare for the test day, what to expect on your exam day. And there's also a tutorial as well, which is like a demo to train you how to use the system that is going to be similar to your test day experience of using this particular platform. So this tutorial will take you through in around 15 minutes of time in terms of, for example, answering multiple choice questions. Click the next button. How you're able to actually highlight a particular sentence, for example, when you tackle essay or vignette item set questions. And you also have the option to strike out some of the answer choices by elimination, how to do that. And also the section review over here that you can see which questions you have flagged or you have not even attempted for you to have an actually quick understanding about your progress. At the end of this exam session, what you're going to do in order to finish the testing section, etc. One thing to remind you about the test center location is that if you actually go into the ProScheduler and search, this is actually something that is a general guide about test center availability. So under the current situation of Kuala Lumpur, in which the December exam is deferred, I will go over in the next section pretty shortly that you're going to receive an email from CFA Institute telling you that after you get the email, then log into your account and then reschedule your exam to next year. This general guide that if you actually just go to the landing page or the Prometric Center location is not candidate specific. We understand the situation of deferred candidates, and therefore we are working very hard to add actually availability to the local market. So therefore, please actually wait for the email from CFA Institute for instructions and then log into your account and therefore follow the procedure accordingly. Register and then schedule. So briefly comparing the paper-based and also the computer-based exam. So for the paper-based exam is 1 day being offered. Computer-based, it depends on the exam window, and each exam window can be up to 10 days. The locations for paper-based, currently we offer the exam globally in 192 locations. But then for computer-based testing, the exam will be provided in a proctored center of Prometric for over 400 locations globally. The exam length is that for paper-based exam, total testing time is 6 hours, but for computer-based exam, it's going to be 4.5 hours. So actually some questions I've received from candidates is that by shortening the exam from 6 hours to 4.5 hours, are you going to make the exam easier? Actually, CFA Institute invested and engaged an independent psychometric research body. And based on the result of this particular study, we are actually advised and told that this short exam time to 4.5 hours will not affect or compromise our ability to determine if a candidate has demonstrated the competencies to be ready to pass the exam or not. So this is just like a thermometer that if you want to take a temperature, if you continue to put it for a longer measurement time, it won't make the thermometer to be more precise. And I also get some questions from candidates, and this is a very good question that for level 1, we talk about that because we are changing from 6 hours to actually 4.5. the number of questions is going to change as well. But in the case of levels 2 and 3, how many questions are there going to be under computer-based testing? In general, we are actually going to make, of course, the total testing time shorter. And therefore, you also expect to see that for the item set questions, we're actually changing that with one vignette followed by 4 questions, and some maybe 6 questions. And in the case of essay questions, this is a little bit challenging to actually update you in terms of how many questions you can get, because actually in essay questions, the allocation of the points by question varies, and therefore it actually is a variable. But in general, we are also shortening in terms of the limit or the time required for each question in essay as well. For actually level 2, we maintain the average time per question going to be the same, which is actually 3 minutes per question. And for level 1, it's 1.5 minutes per question. And this is the same as in paper-based exam. So this is actually what a typical exam day experience is going to look like in computer-based testing. Now, first of all, when you arrive at the proctored exam centers, essentially the first 30 minutes will be allocated to actually the tutorial, candidate survey, and also the pledge. And then this will actually begin with the first testing section, 135 minutes. And then after you finish the first testing session, you'll be provided with a break of 30 minutes, which is optional. So you can actually leave the premise for some fresh air, have some snacks or grab a bite, come back. Or if you believe that I don't need this optional break, I just want to go directly to the second testing session. Yes, you're welcome to do so. And that's going to be the second testing section, 135 minutes. So the total testing time is going to be 4.5 hours. If we include the 30-minute break as well as the 30 minutes in the beginning for pledge and tutorial, the total appointment time is 5.5 hours. One thing that remains the same as in paper-based exam is that you are going to actually use an approved calculator to actually do the calculations. And right now, we approve Texas Instrument BA2 Plus and also HP12C. Another very common question I've seen so far is that I want to do some rough work, and will I be provided in terms of like actually any equipment, etc. So on the testing day, you will be provided by basically a board with two sides, like a plastic board, and also a pen, so that you can actually do your rough work on this board. And you can also actually use tissue paper to erase it in case you're running out of space, and continue the rough work as well. And unfortunately, you will not be allowed to bring your own paper and pen inside to do your rough work. We believe that if you're provided with this actually plastic board with two faces and also a pen to do the rough work on the board, that should be sufficient. In terms of the testing time is that you can actually go back to any question within actually the first testing section. For example, I can jump from question 1 to question 48 and then go back to question 32, no problem. But once you actually submit your questions in the first testing session, you will not be able to go back. So for example, if you have already started in the second testing session, unfortunately, you will not be able to go back in the first section. Another question I've received from candidates is about essay. So how am I going to type a formula in essay questions? So in terms of essay questions, we continue to expect that there will be calculations. But if you actually get the correct answer, even without showing the formula, even without showing the input, but you give, let's say, a correct numerical answer, you'll get a full credit. Having said that, if you actually have the formula and if you have the input, the correct formula, the correct input, but if the ultimate answer is incorrect, you may get partial credit. So therefore, it's advisable that you're going to show your work. Then the question is, how am I going to show the formula? Basically, there will be a space available for you to actually type in the input and what are you doing in terms of your logic behind this formula. We're actually looking right now in terms of getting something similar to a formula editor, just like in Microsoft Word, so that you can actually type up the formula. And when this is ready, we'll actually provide a demo for candidates to experience that. So exam software tutorial, which is actually something I just showcased to you, it is in the candidate landing page that you can actually get 15 minutes to understand how you're going to flag a question, highlight key buzzwords, etc. So this is the landing page one more time, that you can actually check the location of your test centers in mind, get an understanding what to expect on the testing day, and also get hold of the tutorial and play with it. Exam computer-based exam. So for level 1, it will be offered 4 times a year, 4 windows: February, May, August, and November. 4.5 hours, 100% multiple choice questions. For level 2, it will be item sets with 4 to 6 questions after a passage, offered twice a year in May and August, September. And then for essay, it will be made up of essay questions as well as item set as well. And it will be offered 2 times a year in May and November for 2021. So this is the 2021 exam schedule and also the pricing that I just mentioned. And for 2022, level 1 remains 4 times a year. For levels 2 and 3, 2 times a year. For level 2, it's going to be February and August. And for level 3, it will be May and November for 2022. About December 2020 exam and also the deferral options. So late last week, CFA Institute has announced and reached out that unfortunately will not be able to administer the exam in Kuala Lumpur due to pandemic restrictions. So we email impacted candidates and alert them. And upon notification, you'll be able to defer the exam. One thing that I request you is that please wait for your email notification before logging into your account to defer. So wait for the email notification first before you log into your account for further action. So once after you receive this email notification, you'll be able to re-register for one of the administrations available. Again, it's a 2-step process: register and then schedule. The registration is actually open for all exam windows for 2021. The scheduling is currently open for February, May, and August. Let's say you are a level 3 candidate and you want to take November 2021 exam. The scheduling will be open on February 2nd. We understand some of your concern that 2021 exams may reach capacity. This is fully understood because we have new level 1 candidates hoping to take the exam next year, as well as we are dealing with actually 2020 deferred candidates as well. So we are working very, very actively and hard to add capacity to the 2021 exam locations. Let's say if you do not see the available appointments in your desired location, please continue to check back the scheduling function for availability because we'll continue to add in the coming days. So some of you actually asked about the questions regarding deferral and refund. In terms of refund, this applies to only candidates that have been impacted twice due to COVID. That means a candidate who actually signed up and registered for June exam, but once again impacted again by December, then candidates impacted twice are eligible for refund. And please refer to CFA Institute website about the actually refund policy. In general, the refund days will open between December 7th until December 21st. Another thing is that I would encourage you to read more communications such as exam updates, test center updates, And one thing that is key is we would like to hear from you and make sure that we will be able to reach you. So please confirm your email address and make sure that if it is on file with CFA Institute is the correct one. And here are some more additional resources in case you have inquiries. We have the CFA Institute's enterprise website about the exam update page, test center page, global contact center, and also email as well. So with this said, I am very happy to take your question.
Thank you, Grace. So actually for the questions in meeting polls we have received, there are a few questions that have been answered during your sharing session. So the top questions, actually, this question actually applies to level 3 candidates. So how does the CFA Institute conduct the CBT for CFA level 3 candidates for questions that actually involve calculations?
Sure. I mean, so in terms of the, sorry, okay, great question. So in terms of equations, we'll give full credit if you actually just write the correct answer. But of course, we'll also give partial credit if we can actually understand your working, say the formula and correct input. For essay, there will be a space available for you actually to type what are the inputs and for you to explain your logic behind your working. We are currently working on building the equation editor to this particular page so that you can actually type the formula as well. So once this equation editor is available, we'll actually show cases to the actual candidates by a demo.
Okay, as for the next question that whether since the CBT exams will be offered over a 10-day window period, how will CFA Institute ensure that the standard of the exams are upheld? For example, no leakage of questions.
That is a really good question. I think there are two things about it. And the first one is that basically all the exams will be held in Prometrics proctored exam center. And proctors are there to make sure that any unethical candidate behaviors will be observed. So that's number one. And the next thing about it is that when the test is actually being held multiple times a year, after the exam is being taken, we'll have some analysis actually work behind. And for us to actually make sure that candidates who actually possess the competencies required are actually truly rewarded for passing the exam. So with this said, I would say that actually the security rests with the proctor exam center, as well as the actually the equating or actually the MPS process for the passing score and the passing rate as well.
And will the candidates, for example, for the level 3 candidates, will they be expected to answer the essay questions in proper full sentence, or they can just answer it in point form?
I think the important thing is actually for us to understand the logic of the candidates. So with that said, if you're actually going to actually do it, let's say not in complete sentence, but if you're able to actually showcase your understanding of the knowledge, and therefore you will be awarded the credit as well.
Okay. For the next question, historically, for the paper-based exams previously, they can refer to the past year papers. But since CBT format is new, will they be able to get more sets of mock exam questions?
My understanding right now is that for level 1, I think there are actually 3 mock exams being available in the learning ecosystem. And for level 2, I think there are 2, and I'm sorry, I can't remember how many for level 1. So it's not entirely the same as what you're going to see in the software of Prometric, but because it is in learning ecosystem, it's actually something similar enough to be in a computer setting. So therefore, doing the mock exam is actually a very good way for you to practice.
Okay. So will just to be clear again, will the candidate be given the same sets of questions or different sets of questions? And if so, how many sets of questions will there be? Because the exam will be monitored within the 10 days period, exam period.
This is a really good question. I mean, one thing we know for sure is that we want to make sure that candidate experience is going to be consistent. So I'm sorry that I can't really share with you how many sets are there, be it one or be it multiple. But one thing we are very, very keen on is to make sure that the candidate will be tested fairly, and therefore the candidate experience is going to be comparable, no matter you're taking the exam on day 1 of the window versus day 10 of the window.
Okay. I think this question is that what is the questions that the society usually receive for the February exam. So being told that the test capacity in KL for February CFE level 1 is now unavailable. So will it be added before the end of the scheduling window? And is it possible to know when will the capacity will be added?
My understanding about it is that, we are working very hard with Prometric, our service provider, to add more availability to not just Kuala Lumpur, but also other test centers worldwide having similar situation as well. So I'm happy to take this question offline and reach out to the society and give you an update.
Okay, thank you, Grace, for that. So the society will definitely wait for CFA Institute updates on that. And this questions actually applies more on the papers, on the materials that we provided to the candidates. So instead of a board, can the candidates actually request for papers? So because from what I see here, that they like to keep the workings and approach to the questions when they are reviewing their questions.
I understand the candidate's concern, but I'm so sorry that candidates will only be provided the board with 2 faces and also a marker pen to write on that board. Unfortunately, the paper will not be provided, and candidates will not be allowed to take paper and pen into the testing center as well.
Okay, so given that we are moving the platform to CBT's testings, right? So there are candidates asking that why do we need a calculator still given the CBT? So any plan CFA has to move it to a platform using the calculation, for example, like Microsoft Excel?
That is a really good question. I think in the meantime, we are still, expecting or requiring candidates to use a financial calculator, is because in this COVID situation, candidates who may originally plan to take the June 2020 exam will actually be taking the exam in 2021. So with this sharp transition into 2021, and given the candidates has already prepared for the June paper-based exam, so we just want to make sure that there is some consistent transition in the near future. As a result, as a result, the financial calculator is still something we expect candidates to use for 2021. But this is a great point, and please allow me to take it back to my colleagues for further exploration in a very long run future to use Excel.
Definitely then. Assuming that the current SOP is still in place for the exam centers, so what happens if the candidates are denied access to the exam center if they are having a fever on that day?
Certainly hope this is not going to happen, but if unfortunately, if a candidate is not feeling well, other than seeing a doctor, please contact the GCC, the Global Contact Center, because we want to make sure that we are aware of this situation for further follow-up action. Call the GCC, please.
Okay. Let me just have a look. There are so many questions coming in. Okay. Okay, so one question I received here is that can the candidate defer again to exam, for example, in August 2021 if they have postponed their registration from December to May 2021? So I think from this question, it means that they want to defer again. So it means that probably that candidate has deferred to May 2021, but nearer to May or before May, they would want to decide to defer again to another exam window in August 2021. Is that doable?
Unfortunately, the answer is no. I mean, in terms of actually signing up for the Cpt exam, once again, it's a 2-step process: register and then schedule. So step 1, register. That is the step in which you're going to choose which particular exam window you are committed. So once you actually, for example, in this case, sign up for May, we expect candidates to only schedule within the May 10-day week or something like that. So within the May exam window, if candidates would like to change, let's say, the date, time, or the location within the May window, he or she is allowed to do it, but there will be a small fee of $25. But if the candidate would like to switch to another testing window, unfortunately, this is something we are actually treating as if the candidate is registering one more time for the August administration or the August window. So it's not something that the candidate can actually pay the rescheduling fee, $25 to do so. This is like signing up the exam another time. And having said that, we actually do not allow candidates to take the exam into adjacent windows. So let's say if this is a level 1 candidate, that really means after the May exam, it's not going to be the next one being August. It's going to be actually the November administrational window being the next eligible exam administrational window to sign up for.
Okay, and these questions actually, I think these questions that we receive is that more relevant in terms of their pathway. So these questions, it says that whether are they possible, is it possible for a candidate to attempt level 2 exam in May 2021, but then they want to, after they got the results, probably they have passed level 2, they want to sit for the level 3 exam in November 2021. Is that doable?
I think actually there's in CFA Institute's website, there's a path diagram for you to actually see it. If my understanding is correct, actually, that means the person is going to actually take the next eligible level 3 window, and that is actually going to be in the following year, which is the next one. And for level 3, it's going to be actually May 2022.
Okay. I think this questions is a good questions based on the system for the CFA exam. So how CFA Institute ensure that the Cbt exam have no system malfunction during the exam progress? So there might be internet connection or suddenly the computer is not working. How CFA Institute going to allow to ensure that they won't happen?
So just in case, let's say, unfortunately, the internet is lost, for example, right? So let's say a candidate is in the progress, the questions will still be kept. It won't be lost. And the candidate can actually continue to work on the questions as well and continue during the testing time. So let's say if this is like an electricity failure or something, our locations, our test center locations generally should have a backup generator to ensure that electricity can continue to be supplied. So let's say if there's a technical issue, right, the proctors are actually available at the test site to help out. So in general, let's say if actually the issue is something that cannot be, actually would take more than 30 minutes to actually go through that, what is going to happen is that the proctor will actually give the choice to the candidate that do you want to continue to wait until the issue is resolved? Or actually the candidate is going to have an option to reschedule to take the exam again. But what does that mean is that the candidate is going to reschedule the exam within the same window. And if this is the case, that means the candidate will actually retake the exam within the same window, but he or she is not going to actually continue at, let's say, where he or she stops at, let's say at question 62. No, he or she will actually start back again, as if this is a fresh new exam and do it one more time.
So it means they have the option to choose to reschedule, or they can just wait for the
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes, that's right.
And we have this one question for I think we received most questions for level 3 exam. So how will the screen for level 3 item sets and structured question look like? Are they allowed to actually toggle their screen? And will the screen be separated into two space, or they have to refer to the questions and scroll the screen up and down to find the answer to the pro or the point of the question?
Yeah, basically candidates are allowed to scroll up and down. And it is something that we are actually working on it right now. So please wait for more information to come for this question. And one thing about it is that, the system does allow you to actually highlight the key buzzword. and also cross out, for example, an incorrect choice that you believe is unlikely to be true. So for example, highlighting the sentence, this is the key thing. This is similar to as if doing paper-based exam, like underlying the key buzzwords in a vignette of item set or essay question.
Okay, this is more of a exam center. In view of the current pandemic situation, how will the computer center location being properly sanitized and safe for the next user due to the new norm?
That is a really good question. We definitely will follow the guideline of the local market in terms of what is the hygiene and also the sanitary requirement for the test centers.
I think yep. Actually, that's all that we have received today. There are many of it, but I think the other questions are mostly have been addressed during your session. So let me just scroll down and see whether we have received any more new questions.
Yeah,
Okay.
Shafika, Grace, maybe we should give an opportunity to anyone on the call or the session if they would like to voice out, if they'd like to speak as well. So please feel free. You can also voice out your questions.
Yep, you can just put a hand raise and then we can just unmute you.
Yep.
Okay, so there's this questions asking that this candidate would like to know why students are not allowed to take adjacent session.
I think the main reason why behind it is that, we actually need to do some work after actually taking the exam in order to see if candidates actually pass or fail. And having said that, this period of time usually will actually be longer when the next adjacent session registration will close. So it's actually because of this particular period of time, we actually need to make sure that we have done sufficient work to let candidates know if he or she passed, and therefore sign up for the next available session. As a result, this is actually usually taking longer than the next adjacent window registration will actually take longer than when it closes. So therefore, the fastest will be actually the window that is not the adjacent one, but the one after next that is being available for candidates to take the exam.
Okay. Do we have any other questions from the floor? Okay, so this questions is more of the computer screen setting. So this candidate would like to know whether they could customize the computer screen settings in the investment industry. Is there any possible way they can fulfill the requirement of 4 years of working experience?
I think in terms of customize it, is my understanding is you can actually change the color background.
Oh, sorry, Grace. I think that was I mixed up with the question. So
Oh, no worries.
this candidate would like to ask whether they could customize the computer screen settings before they start the exam because they would like to minimize the font size. Probably they want to save their time from scrolling up and down.
I see. This is a good question, and I'm happy to take it back and look into it.
Okay. So I think shouldn't be marking there. Okay, so I think there are many of the questions in the meeting pulse and also in the meeting chat box has been addressed earlier in the webinar. So if you have any other questions that have not been answered or have not been addressed in the session just now, probably you can just raise a hand and maybe we can mute you, or we can unmute you, and then maybe you can just raise questions here in the chat box or in the meeting pulse. And just to let the attendees know here that this session is recorded. And of course, you can rewatch this again after the session ends. Probably will be uploaded in YouTube the soonest by this week. And we will email the link to all attendees today. So is there any other questions? Or we can just accept one or two more questions before we end the session. Okay, I think this question is more of the technical issues that we have. We just now have explained that in case of the technical issues occur during the exam itself, Grace, and the students probably have the option to actually wait or they can reschedule. So will there be any extra fees charged if they opt to reschedule?
It's something that we are still looking into this because we actually don't expect this to happen very frequently. But please allow me to take it back and actually get back to you later.
Okay. Carol, would you like to add anything else?
No. I think there are few feedbacks, Grace, which you'll gather from this session. We hope that you'll be able to provide the society a further updates after you take this back and discuss with your team. And when we get those feedback from you, we will then accordingly share to our candidates as well to address some of the questions that they have filled today.
Sure, it's my pleasure to see everyone here.
Yeah.
Hi Grace, hi Caroline, this is Justin here. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, hi Justin,
Yep.
how are you?
Hey, how are you guys doing? Yeah, I think just a message to all candidates here. I think from a society perspective, I think we feel you, right? With recent cancellations. I think before the cancellation, I think Caroline and myself has been in touch with the security department and exam department in CFA Institute in the state, right? I think we closely monitor some of the development, right? I think we reached a point where I think there's too much uncertainty that we need to deal with, and I think an institute call to cancel, right? So I think rest assured that you have the society with you during this difficult time, right? Any thoughts, doubts, questions that you may have, right? Feel free to send it to us, right? We would try our very best to answer it as much as we can. If there's any help that you think that we could come in, I think certainly we would definitely try that, right? Grace, maybe one quick question for my side, right? Is that since we are moving to CBT, right? And why are we still using the financial calculator here, right? Because a lot of time when it comes to exam, CFA exam, we need to train ourselves in using the financial calculator. And financial calculator is not something that we use, right, as part of our work. Is there any plan from CFA Institute to move away from financial calculator to some computerized worksheet like, Microsoft Excel? Any thoughts that you could share?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, this is something we are actually looking into it right now. And in the meantime, it's not something we hope can be as fast as we wish. It's a really good point, Justin, agree with you. So, I mean, just stay tuned in the near future.
Okay, and Grace, I think I picked up one of the questions from our candidate, Harris, in the chat box, right? Given that it's really CBT, shouldn't be the whole grading and marking be a lot faster than paper-based exam, right? So why do we still need to wait for that sort of period of time? Maybe you can enlighten us on that.
Yeah, sure. One thing about it is actually because essentially within an exam window, we actually have up to 10 days, and we have actually many different hundreds of locations of candidates. So it's actually a process in which we're essentially measuring, each candidate's performance. And at the same time, we also need the board to actually approve in terms of what is the passing percentage as well. And on top of it, actually, for essay questions, we are still continuing to actually get our charter holder members, volunteers, to grade the exam as well. So understand that, the strong desire to fasten, and we will try our best to actually do it quicker.
Grace, we have one question here that I understand that CBT will only provide the board and the marker for their workings. Will CFA Institute consider to change its policy by providing pen and paper given with the candidate feedbacks?
In the meantime, we're not prepared for it. And I have to say that one reason is because I know that in a paper-based exam, candidates are actually printing the admission ticket and bringing in. And having said that, this is something in which we are actually having our proctors to check the paper as well as part of the security protocol. So that's why we would like to ensure that to cut down the admin work in terms of the protocol of actually checking the candidate possession materials. As a result of this consistent experience, we are providing actually a plastic board with two faces together with a marker for actually the rough work.
So they are not allowed to bring in any other materials.
Sorry.
Their own materials, right? Yep. Okay.
Correct.
So will CFA Institute consider to include other brands of financial calculator, for example, the Casio financial calculator in the future?
In the meantime, we are actually it's something that we have been actually adopting for quite a while already. That is going to be BA2 Plus as well as HP12C. And essentially, these are very common financial calculators and widely accessible.
Okay.
Grace, there's one good question here if I can help, right?
Sure.
So since it's a CBT exam, can we do Control-C and Control-V from the questions?
My understanding that I have experienced before is yes, I was able to do that when I type and write the question. Yeah, that's what I do.
That's good.
Yeah. That's what I did. Yeah.
Yes, I think so. So far, the questions in the meeting polls and the chat box have been answered. If we miss any, maybe you can just from the floor. Do you have any other questions? Probably we can take two more questions before we end the session. Or maybe you can just raise your hand and then we can unmute you as well. Okay. So I guess so far there's no question. So thank you so much for attending today. We will actually, and again, thank you to Grace for being able to come for sessions, and then it really helps the candidates to understand more of the CBT and how they can reschedule and basically on the format. So we appreciate you in terms of that. And for the candidates, we have a feedback survey here. So I appreciate if you can fill in the feedback from, maybe you can just for a short few seconds. Shichi, probably you can put up the feedback, please.
Yep. And also, if you have any further question after this session, you may also drop us email. I have already dropped in the chat box. admin@cfamalaysia.org. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you tonight. And thanks again for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Grace.
lot, Grace, on behalf of Malaysia.
Thank you.
And Grace, we are able to share the deck that you presented with the candidates, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks a lot, guys. Hope you guys have a good evening, right? So I think for the impacted candidate, I think the quick reminder here is do not do anything until 16th of November, right?
Please.
You'll be advised on the next step. So don't have to rush it through or panic at the moment, right? I think wait for a week more when things are unfolding itself.
Correct. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Grace.
Bye.
Thank you, Grace.
Bye.